Hello. So this is the third video that I'm making. As always, I'm completely unprepared. I don't know what I'm going to say. So here we go. So to the best of my memory, in the first video, we proved with a reasonable degree of certainty that there is a maker for the universe. And in the second video, we started to address what type of attributes does that maker have? In other words, what is that maker like? I think we talked about some other things which were extremely important, but that's where we are right now. So we will pick it back up. So there is a maker. That's for all practical purposes a fact. And if you want to know how we arrived at that, please watch the first and second video. So in this video, the second most important question in explaining existence, after the first most important question was, is there a maker or not in any human being's life? So we answered that. The second most important question is, what is that maker like? What are the maker's attributes? And how do we answer that question? Well, we look at existence. Every answer that I give and a human being should give should be based on reality. Reality is all that exists. Everything that exists constitutes reality. So, and your answers are right there. If you look at reality without putting feelings into it, take your feelings and ego and all of that aside, put it aside, and just look at reality objectively, scientifically, empirically. All of those words, for all practical purposes, they are the same. They mean the same thing. And so what are the attributes? So where do we start? Where do we start looking at reality? So the best way to look at anything when you want to define that thing or know anything about it is to look at the big picture first and then start getting small, going to the appropriate level of details. So what is the biggest thing in existence? Well, the celestial bodies, the sky, the space is the biggest thing. There is nothing bigger in existence. That in the physical world we are speaking, right? So in the physical world, meaning the world that is made up of matter, the biggest thing is the world of galaxies and celestial bodies, which we just call the sky. And in science, it's called space. So space-time, because they really think of space-time as being one and the same, and they are one and the same in physics. Because when you travel back in space, you're also traveling back in time. So if you look at a star that is 5 light years away, a light year is the distance that light travels in 1 year. So a light year is a measure of distance, not a measure of time. So because astronomical distances are so great, just the astronomical numbers are truly astronomical. They are huge. So light travels roughly about 186,000 miles per second, or that translates into about 330,000 kilometers per second. So, just for the sake of comparison, when you're traveling your car on a highway, you're traveling about 75 miles an hour. 75 miles an hour. So just compare that with 186,000 miles per second. Okay, so that's the type of speed that we are talking about. And when you travel, if you travel that fast, and by the way, Einstein, so far, science holds that light is the fastest object in the universe. So nothing travels faster than light. That's what astrophysicists, theoretical physicists, and modern science believes today as I'm sitting here. What they will discover tomorrow or the next day or 50 years or 100 years or 1,000 years from now, if the world is still around, who knows? But as of right now, light is the fastest object in the universe, fastest thing in the universe. So space-time are one and the same as you're traveling back in space. So when you're looking at a star that's 5 light years away, you're looking at a star as it was 5 years ago. Because the light that left that star 5 years ago is just now reaching you. So you're seeing the light that left that star 5 years ago. So that means, in effect, you're seeing the star 5 years ago. So as you travel back in space, you are looking into the past. So if something is 1,000,000 light years away, you're looking at it as it was 1,000,000 years ago. You don't know if it's there today or not. You don't know. It may or may not be. But 1,000,000 years ago, it looked like the way it looks to you today on Earth. I hope that makes sense. It's a simple concept to understand, I believe. And I think I've explained it clearly enough. So, again, the big question is, what are the attributes of the Maker? And we are looking at the sky because the sky is the biggest thing in the universe, in existence. I like existence better because it means all that exists. So, what do you see? You see a whole bunch of celestial bodies. Huge stars, smaller stars, medium-sized stars, smaller stars, planets. You even see rocks that we call asteroids. And they range anywhere from like being half the size of the Earth or maybe bigger or smaller than to just rocks the size of the ones that you see on Earth. So everything from extremely huge to medium size to smaller size exists in the sky. Some of them radiate light, some of them do not reflect the light of other things. There's huge, vast fluctuations in temperature. The stars are super hot. The space itself goes almost to absolute zero, which is about negative 272, if I remember correctly, Celsius, which is called 0 Kelvin. That's where all motions of at the atomic level stop. Things stop moving. Electrons, everything that moves stops moving. That's why they call it absolute zero. So the electrons that go around the nucleus. So the nucleus contains protons and neutrons. The electrons go around it. That stops moving. So everything comes to a standing halt. And that's called 0 Kelvin. So we have 3 ways of measuring temperature: Fahrenheit, Celsius, and Kelvin. And negative 270, about negative 270 Celsius is called 0 Kelvin. So that's space for you. Well, what do you see in space? After you see billions and billions and billions and billions of different size, different temperature, what I call celestial bodies, nebulae, that's just basically space gas, and then it's mostly made up of hydrogen. So some nebulae are light years across, meaning light takes years to travel from one side of this gas blob to the other side. 100 light years, 200 light years. These are huge distances we are talking about. So the question is, what is the first thing that you observe when you look at the night sky? Night after night after night after night. Well, you see order. That's what you see. They're not doing random, erratic things. Right? We're just describing reality, right? And you don't need to be a physicist to notice this. So what you see is that they are there like clockwork every night. They don't do erratic things. They move in a certain fashion all the time. They move in a certain fashion. All of them do. All of them. All of the billions and billions, to the extent that we can know about them. So you see this immaculate order. And then you also see that they are all tolerating each other. They are coexisting, meaning the very, 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 very huge things. They are coexisting with the very, 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 very small things, and also all the sizes in between. There's billions and billions and billions, maybe trillions of this celestial bodies. Each of them is an individual thing, right? So gigantic stars, small stars, things that are not stars, comets, meteors, planets, nebulae that are just gases. They're just coexisting. They are tolerating each other, and they are extremely ordered. Well, that's what we see. That's what we see. We are just describing what we see, that's what this channel is all about. Explaining existence. It starts with looking and defining. That's it. The first step in understanding something is to describe it. That's it. Factually. Put your feelings aside, put your ego aside, put your biases aside, put your emotions aside. Just describe it. It doesn't matter what it is. It does not matter what it is. If I want to describe my own mother, I put my feelings aside, I put my emotions aside, I put my biases aside, I describe her factually. Same thing goes for my computer, for my desk, whatever. That's the first step. Of course, you cannot put your feelings aside 100%. You cannot put your ego aside 100%. And as I told you in the previous 2 lectures, 100% and 0% don't exist almost never in this physical world. Okay? So this business of saying nobody can put their ego aside all the way, of course, we already agreed on that. We cannot, we, we shouldn't waste time and repeat it every time, okay? But we can get as close as possible. Get as close as possible. That's good enough for your person. For each person is different. I've been at it for many years, many years. Okay, decades. And I am good at putting my feelings aside when I judge things, when I look at things, when I describe things. Let's put the word judge aside. Judgment comes later. So the first step is to describe it. I misspoke when I said judge, so just scratch that because we aren't there yet. It comes later, of course. But the first step is to describe it and put your own feelings and ego aside, your biases, your cultural biases, your personal biases, which is also commingled with your cultural biases. Try to put all of that aside and get to as minimum as possible. And for different people, that minimum is different. Okay, I can come, I think, pretty close to less than 5%, meaning I can put 95% or more of it aside, more of my biases aside, and become almost 95 or better percent objective, right? Okay, so for a person who's just starting, they may be able to, put 2 or 3% of it aside. Hey, that's a great first step. It's a great first step. So, and as you do it more and more, you get better at it. Just, you practice. And they say practice makes perfect. Practice makes better. Whatever it is you're practicing, you get better and better and better at it. I don't know about perfect, but you get better at it. It doesn't matter what it is. Okay? So, and in this case, we are practicing putting our biases aside. So try to put as much of your biases aside. And when you look at I keep saying universe, I'm sorry, existence. When you keep looking at existence, the first thing is the sky because it's the biggest thing in existence. And then when we look at the sky, we see a whole bunch of things in it, billions and billions of individual things. And what do we see? We see that they are ordered, extremely ordered. How do we know that? Because they do the same thing night after night after night after night after night. Because when we see the sky, it's at nighttime, right? They are there all the time. They are ordered during the day too, right? We just don't see it because sunlight overpowers the light from the stars. They are there too. And we see evidence of the fact that they are ordered at night. There's the same sky. If you want to pick a celestial body, let's say a star or planets or whatever, they are there. They have moved a little bit, but they are there. And their movement is very ordered. They don't move differently. Okay? They don't move like this way one night and the other way some other night, or at a different speed one night and at a really super different speed another night. Their speed varies by a little bit. Everything has just about everything has margins, okay? Meaning they have a little bit of a leeway, okay? But they don't move significantly, substantially differently. For all practical purposes, it's the same. And they're pretty much, they are always moving, almost always, and this is very close to always, because sometimes supernovae happen. Supernovae are when stars explode. So when that happens, it creates a little bit of disruption. But that doesn't happen every day. Like they happen every thousands of, the last one was seen, I think right around 1000 AD is when one of them was seen in China, I believe, if I remember correctly. Then there was another one was seen, I think, within the past few decades. So long story short, they don't happen every day. They are by far very rare occurrences and they are outliers. So, generally speaking, things move the same way, at the same speed, and they observe the same laws, the same order, and that's number one. Number two is that they coexist. They are coexisting. All of these billions of celestial bodies, they are coexisting. Those are the two things that you observe. Okay, we may come up with more, but initially those are the main two huge things that you observe. Well, where does that come from? Where does those two attributes come from? Where do those two attributes come from? Well, they come from the maker, right? If you hire a carpenter and makes you a porch, a deck, well, if that carpenter is careful, meticulous, measures things correctly, then you end up with a well-measured, well-built deck. So when you look at the deck and you notice that it's well measured, it's sturdy, you know that those attributes are in the mind of the carpenter. That's the only way that it could come about. If the carpenter was reckless, didn't measure things right, didn't calculate the weight of the deck right, didn't pour the right foundation, you would end up with a deck that reflects those attributes. That is shaky, it's not measured right. When you walk on it, it sinks here, it sinks there, and it falls apart because it's not well measured. It's not a perfect rectangle if you wanted a rectangle deck, right? Then you wouldn't be hiring that carpenter anymore. You're like, hey, listen, sorry, man, you might be a nice guy and all that, but you are not good at what you do. You did not build a well-ordered, well-measured deck. And I have the evidence right here. It fell apart on me. It's sinking over there. It's not level anymore. I walked in the corner and it sank. So the attributes of the carpenter came through in the work that the carpenter produced. Now you can give that example about anything, about an automaker, about anything maker. My master's is in economics. In economics, they give the example of widgets. Anytime they want to talk about a manufactured object, they go a widget maker. So they pretty much mean anything, right? Anything that's manufactured. So, and as I told you, my PhD is in humanities, and my first Bachelor of Science degree is in molecular biology and microbiology. My second Bachelor of Science degree is in liberal studies with a heavy concentration in philosophy. And then I entered medical school. I figured out, hey, that's not for me. I resigned my seat. Then I came back and I said, hey, I want to continue my education. So I went and got a master's in economics and a PhD in humanities. And I